Okay, namaste everyone, and welcome to our satsang this morning. This is our 10th class on studying together the Kena Upanishad. So when we met for our last class, we were discussing verses from chapter 2 of Kena Upanishad. And in this section of the text, we saw that the teacher was engaging in a conversation, engaging in a dialogue with his students to be sure that they understood the nature of Atma as he taught, them, as he instructed them. And so at heart of that interrogation, at the heart of that exchange between teacher, guru, and student, shishya, was his effort to be sure that they were not thinking of Atma, of themselves, as an object. And this is a theme that we have seen throughout the text. If we wanted to say, what really is at the heart, what distinctive does the Kena Upanishad bring to the teaching about the nature of Atma, we'll have to say that it focuses in this unique way on the fact that Atma is never an object of the senses, never an object of the mind. It's non-object nature is at the very heart, in the very essence of this text. So if one thinks, as he said, of the Atma as an object, something that is objectified by senses and mind, then he said to his students, you have not understood. And if you think of it, so that is, if you think of it as a known object, you have not understood. But at the same time, if you think of it as an unknown object, you have also not understood. It is not a known object, it is not an unknown object that is likely at some stage to become known as an object. So it is different, as we said, from both the known and the unknown objects. And if it is not an object that is known or an object that is unknown, does it mean that it is non-existent? So we discussed this, these are the two categories. Things are either known or things are either unknown. And if they are not known or they are not unknown, perhaps, someone might conclude that it is not existent. After all, these are the categories. And so the teacher said, no, there is a third category. And in this third category, Atman alone belongs. And that is, it is not an object, known or unknown, it is the subject. It is the knower. Different from the known and the unknown means there is another category, the knower. The knower whose nature is awareness, because of which I know what I know, and I am aware that there are many things that I do not know. And so Atma is the knower. The content of this knower, the nature of this knower we are learning is awareness alone. So it is the content of the I word. Every word has a content. And the content of the I, aham, I word, is awareness, which is Atma. So this was the discussion that we were having when we finished our class last day. And so the knowledge of Atma is, in the famous line from Upanishad, aham brahmasmi. It is never that, I know it. Aham, I know myself. Aham, I. Aham brahma asmi. I am that Brahman. I am that awareness because of which all things are known. So this is one of the great sentences of the Upanishads, aham brahma asmi. And see how it is beautifully constructed, where Atman is not objectified, but the sentence takes the form of I am that. Aham Brahma Asmi. Asmi, the verb at the end. So the next mantras in this chapter, the next two mantras conclude section 2 of the text. And so I'm beginning now with the mantra that follows. Pratibodha viditam matam amritatvam hi vindate. Pratibodha viditam matam amritatvam hi vindate. Atmana vindate viryam. Vidyaya vindate amritam. Atmana vindate viryam. Vidyaya vindate amritam. So in this verse, the teacher is beginning now to summarize. He's now, assured himself that his students have understood, or at least one of his students have understood, but certainly we can assume they've all understood. So he's coming back now and he's offering, what he sees as very at the very core of what he has been teaching them. He begins now to summarize this text as the dialogue comes to an end. So here he says, so Atman, as we have seen, in this chapter, it is not an object that is known. It is not an object that is unknown. So naturally, the question arises, we have been discussing, how do we know it? When we know it, how do we understand it? So he begins this verse here, Pratibodha viditam matam. Bodha means knowledge or thought. Knowledge of all kinds or thoughts of all kinds are also called bodha. Pratibodha means in every thought, in every state of the mind, in every manifestation of knowledge in the mind, we call it pratibodha viditam matam. It is to be known. Pratibodha viditam matam. Atman is properly known when it is known to be present in pratibodhitam, in every thought, in every manifestation, in every activity of the mind. So all of this will follow beautifully from the discussion that we have prepared ourselves, all that we have learned in the last series of classes. So basically, we understand ourselves, we understand the nature of Atma, which we have learned already is Brahman, because he spoke earlier of that identity. Atman has to be understood how? As the unchanging presence, the unchanging awareness in every state of mind. In every state of mind. It is the Atman that makes all states, all mental states possible. And we have seen that before. That which the mind cannot know, but because of which the mind knows. So that because of which all activities of the mind are made possible. That because of which the mind functions. Yena ahur mano matam. That is the Atman, and that is how he says here, it has to be known. Think of it in this way. Understand it in this way. To know, to gain knowledge, certain things are necessary. So, just as an example, an object is necessary. Book. So this is the object. I want to know this object, this book, this pustak, as we say in Sanskrit, this book. So knowledge requires an object of knowledge. In this case, the book. And then if I want to see the book, I can know this book in various ways. I can know it by touch. I can know it by sound. But let's say that I want to see the book. I want to see its form. I want to see its color. Then I need an appropriate sense organ. So in this case, I need a functioning pair of eyes. So I need the object, I need the sense organs that are free from defects, a defect-free sense organ. So that's number 2. Number 3, I need a mind and certain characteristics of this mind. So I need the object, I need the sense organ, I need the mind. So my mind must be, first of all, attentive, because we all know the experience. We can have something right in front of us and we don't see it because the mind is not attentive. The mind was elsewhere. We say that so often. I did not see you. I'm so sorry, I did not notice you. My mind was elsewhere when you passed by. Right? So the mind must be attentive. Also, it must be focused. And that focused mind must have the right thought. The right thought is the thought that corresponds to what I am holding. So this is a book. So if I say, I'm holding this in my hand and you said, you're holding a tree, you're seeing an object, but you don't have the thought that corresponds to the, you don't have the thought that corresponds to the object. So these 3 factors, object, sense organ, mind, attentive, and with the thought that corresponds to the nature of the nature of the book. So in Sanskrit, we will say, what is that right thought? Pustak akara vritti. Vritti means thought. Pustak is book. So the right thought will be the thought that is in the form of book. So it's pustak akara vritti. Vritti, the thought that is corresponds to the nature of what I am holding there. And as objects change, the thoughts also change. But these 3 factors are well known. And in most traditions, or generally speaking, in understanding of the whole, what we call technically processes of knowing, or the technical word for it is epistemology. These are the 3 factors that are universally required: object, sense organ, mind. What the Upanishad here is telling us is the 4th factor. The 4th factor. The 4th factor is awareness. The 4th factor is Atma. So Kena Upanishad says that there's a 4th factor that is required. Why? Because all of these 3, object, sense organ, mind, are inert. They don't have consciousness or awareness. They are inert. Even mind in the Vedanta tradition is made of the 5 great elements in a subtle form, but still material. They're all material, and because they are material, they are inert. That which is inert cannot give rise to knowledge. So I can have the book in my hand, I can have a sense organ, I can have a mind, but knowledge only occurs when I say I know, I am aware. And that awareness is different from the book, is different from the sense organ, is different from the mind. It is the 4th factor, Atma, whose nature is awareness or consciousness, as we say. So thoughts change when there is a right thought, right? So when there's the object, there is a sense organ, there is the right thought. And when that right thought, bodha, is illumined by the light of awareness, the light that is Atma, the light that is you, the light that is I, then alone knowledge occurs. Then alone knowledge occurs. Then alone knowledge happens. And thoughts change, but this light of awareness does not. In knowledge, there are changing thoughts, and there is unchanging awareness. So this is why the teacher here says, Pratibodha. Pratibodha viditam matam. In every state of mind, in every thought, it is present. And that's how it should be known. That's how it should be recognized. When the thought is, Atman is. When the thought is present, Atma is present. Awareness is present. When the thought is not, it's also present. And here are the unique claims of the Upanishad, the Vedanta tradition. So the claim is that it is not a product of the thought, right? It is present when the thought is present, and because of this association, because it is present every time a thought is present, it's very easy to conclude that this Atma, which is nature's awareness, is created by the thought. That when the thought happens, the awareness also comes into being. It is created. Like thoughts change, we might conclude, but in this case wrongly, that this awareness, that is Atma, is a product of thought, is a product of the thinking process. But this is not the Upanishadic understanding. It is not a product of thought. It is not created by the thought. It is not a quality of a thought. It is independent. It is independent and it is unchanging. The thought is subject to time. It comes and it goes. Awareness is independent. It is unchanging. It is not subject to time. So what I am conscious of changes. What I am aware of changes. That I am aware does not change. So our attention, therefore, must shift. Knowledge of the Atma, or Atma Jnana, as we say, this is what we are discussing, is a shift in understanding, a shift in attention from the changing thoughts to the unchanging awareness. Turning attention is not looking for it as an object. It is to recognize oneself as the knower of all states of the mind. Thoughts are objects. Awareness is an unchanging subject. So let me just give you an analogy, an example. We all know this. We go to the cinema to see our favorite movie, and then we sit and the movie starts, and then we're seeing all of these are images, right? The movie is a series of images, one image after another. Images keep flowing, and the story is told through a succession of images. What we are not attentive to is the screen on which all of these images are occurring, which is always there. The images come and the images go, but there are no images if there is no ground. There is no ground on which these images live. They appear, they exist, and then they disappear. So the screen, if we are attentive, we know that there is a screen. We can be attentive to the screen, and we know that the screen is a necessity for the images. So in a similar way, and this is only an analogy, so please, Atma is like the screen, the unchanging screen upon which all thoughts, all mental states flow. So pratibodha, in every thought, every state of mind, in every form of knowledge, we must know that it is. We should recognize the reality, the presence of ourselves, Atma, pratibodha viditam matam. Only when it is understood like this, then it is truly understood. Because what happens if we do not understand it in this way? Just think of it for a moment with me. If we do not understand, as teacher says here, pratibodha viditam matam, then we are likely to commit the error of thinking that Atman is a state of the mind. If we don't see it in every state of the mind, then how will we understand it? We will think of it as a particular state of the mind, a particular state of the mind. And then we'll say, well, today I was, my Atma was there. But I don't know what happened to it. It came and it went. And then that would be wrong. In every state of the mind, only when we understand it as present, in every state of the mind, do we truly understand. So if you consider what the teacher is saying here, pratibodha viditam, it is obviously thinking is not an obstacle to knowing Atman. I don't have to stop my thoughts. If I wish, it's fine. I can, that's practicing, to silence one's mind by reducing thoughts. That's a very good mental practice, very good discipline, but it's not the same as Atma Jnana. Atma Jnana is to know that whatever the thought there in my mind, Atman is present. Thinking is a blessing. Our ability to think is a great blessing. Thinking is not an obstacle to knowing Atma. The obstacle is not knowing that it is present in every thought, in every state. It is not a special state of the mind. If it was a special state of the mind, then it will come and go. It will be an object that comes and it goes. So pratibodhi, so we have to remember, this is an important, very important line. Pratibodha viditam matam. Pratibodha viditam matam. And we can extend that, Here the teacher is saying that it is present. If your mind is active, Atman is. It always is. We can extend this also to thinking it is present in all states. We usually speak of the waking state as we are now. And if we are awake and we are aware, Atman is. And then, so this is Jagrat. Jagrat avastha in Sanskrit, the waking state, Atma is. Dream state, Swapna avastha, Atma is. Because when we dream, we are aware that we dream. And the third, the sleep state, Sushupti avastha, the sleep state. Big discussion there among the commentators to establish that even in the state of sleep, Atman is. There is no state when it is not. There is no thought when Atma is not. We may not be attentive to it, but that doesn't mean that it is not. So in this verse here, verse 4 in chapter 2, teacher says how it should be known, pratibodha viditam matam, and then he tells us also, as he's is coming to the conclusion of this text now, he tells us what is the fruit of that knowledge, at least one of the important fruits, or as we say, phala. What is the phala of knowing this, of knowing oneself as this Atma that is present in every state of the mind? So he says, pratibodha viditam matam. What do we gain? What is the gain? What is the gain of this knowledge? Pratibodha viditam matam, amritatvam hi vidyate. Amritatvam hi vindate. What do we gain? Amritatvam. Amritatvam hi vindate. What is amritatvam? Freedom from mrita, freedom from death. Amritatvam, immortality. When we know this, then the gain is freedom from mortality. This is the phala, the fruit of wisdom that the teacher wants to hold up here. The phala of knowing of Brahma Jnana. Because, as he said, thoughts change, right? The both has changed. Awareness doesn't change because, as we have learned already, it is not limited by time. Objects change. Objects come and go. That because of which we are aware of all objects is not limited by time. Atman is that because of which we are aware of change itself. Because of the changeless, we are aware of change. So in that sense, it is not limited by time. We have the beautiful prayer that we recite, Asato ma sadgamaya, Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya. And the third line, Mrityorma amritam gamaya. Mrityorma amritam gamaya. So lead me, gamaya, from what? From mrityu, from death to amritam, to immortality. Lead me from, or lead us from mortality to immortality. Mrityorma amritam gamaya. And here the teacher says, amritatvam hi vindate. So how do we gain that immortality? By knowing the truth of ourselves. And then everything, that we have learned, those of us who've been studying Bhagavad Gita, so many verses, will fall into place with this. Gita says, na jayate, it is not born, namriyate, it does not die, namriyate va kadachita, at any time. There is no death, there is no mortality for this Atma. Nainam chindanti shastrani, weapons cannot cut it. Nainam dahati pavakaha, winds cannot dry it. Nachainam kledayanti apu, no weapon can sever it. Nasoshayati marutaha, no wind can dry it. All it is indestructible. It is indestructible. So he mentions here the fruit, the phala of Atma Jnana. Amritam hi vindate. Atmana vindate viryam. Vidyaya vindate amritam. And to make sure that we understand clearly, he repeats in this second half of this verse. Atmana vindate viryam. Knowing oneself, gaining knowledge of oneself, viryam. One is empowered. Viryam, strength. One gains strength. It's an interesting observation. Viryam, one becomes courageous. One gains strength. And we can think, you can think, I can think, we can try to understand now, in what sense that this teaching, this understanding empowers us. How does it lead to virya? Vidyam, how does it make us vidyam? Because it, fear, it frees from fear. Fear of death is, it's a deep human anxiety. We're all subject to that anxiety. It's perhaps the most fundamental fear of most human beings, of every human being. But here the phala, one of the fruits, it says, is freedom from fear. It's a wisdom that makes you fearless. Abhaya. Bhaya is fear. Abhaya, freedom from fear. And then he reiterates, Vidyaya vindate amritam, that this freedom from mortality, this freedom from fear, how does it come to us? Vidyaya. Vidya means knowledge. By knowledge. Vidyaya vindate amritam. By knowledge, by understanding, one becomes free from fear, one gains immortality. What is important here is that, what he is speaking here about is not something that is mortal becoming through some transformative process, becoming immortal, because the mortal cannot in the teaching of the Upanishads, that which is mortal cannot become immortal. What is gained here is the discovery that Atma is immortal, and I, in my error, erroneously, I took it to be mortal. So that's why he says, by knowledge, by understanding, by right understanding, one becomes free from fear and one gains immortality. It is not a transformation of the mortal into immortal. It is that which was taken to be mortal, discovering that it is really immortal. Here itself, here and now. So we say sometimes, my guru used to say, this is, and I took that as a title of my first book that I wrote, so from his great teaching. I learned that expression from him. What the Upanishad here describes as Vidyaya vindate amritam, by knowledge one gains immortality. In Sanskrit, he used to say this is a beautiful expression, apraptasya praptihi. So he says there are two kinds of gains. In Sanskrit, praptasya praptihi and apraptasya praptihi. So you can gain things that you don't have. So apraptasya, those things that we don't have, we can gain. Like, I don't have a home, I can purchase a home. So that's gaining something that I don't yet have. But he always spoke about gaining something that you already have. Praptasya praptihi, the gaining of the gain. You already have it, but for by some process of avidya, you don't know that you have it. That which you want to become, in other words, that which you want to become, you are already. That which you want to become, the immortal being that we all yearn to become, we are. So that's praptasya praptihi, gaining of that which you already have by the removal of ignorance. Accomplishing, I call my book Accomplishing the Accomplished. Praptasya praptihi. This is what this verse is talking here about. Vidyaya vindate amritam. Discovering immortality through removal of false understanding, gain of right knowledge. And so in the final verse of this second chapter, Guru adds, Iha ched avidita satyamasti. Na ched iha vidin mahati vinashti. Bhuteshu bhuteshu vichitra dira pretyasman lokar amrita bhavanti. So again, speaking of the Phala, trying to praise this knowledge, praise this teaching, as he approaches the end of the text, he says, Iha cheda vidita satyamasti. If here, iha, that's a very important term he uses, here, now, here. If you understand this, iha cheda vidita, if you understand this here in this life, not in the life to come, but in this life, satyamasti. There is great, you have gained great truth. Satyam asti. There is truth. Na chediha vedin mahati vinashti. If you don't, you have lost. You suffer great loss. It is great. You suffered great loss. So it's a commending of knowledge, commending of this teaching. In our tradition, I have to say, in our tradition, in this tradition that we are learning, we are studying, we view human existence as a great gift, as a great opportunity. There are many purposes for human life. But what the teacher is saying here is that the most fundamental purpose, the great gift of human existence, the great opportunity that human life offers us is to know who we are. And when we know that there is satyam, there is truth, we have come to the truth. If we don't, then there is great loss. Mahavinashti, there is great loss, because if we don't understand ourselves to be, as the Upanishads describe, Chidananda Rupa, Shivoham, Shivoham, we've seen, then we have lost. We have lost who we truly are. So our tradition returns again and again, to reminding us of how important and how significant it is that we make use of this great gift of human existence to gain understanding of this teaching. Viveka Chudamani, the great poem that is attributed to Shankara, he begins on this point. I've often quoted this verse in the past, but he opens this poem by saying, Durlabham trayamevaitat daivanugraha hetukam manushyatvam mumukshutvam mahapurusha samsrayaha. Durlabham, difficult, very difficult. These three, trayamevaitat, these three are very difficult to come together, to gain. What is it? Manushyatvam, to be human, to have the gift of human existence. Manushyatvam, mumukshutvam. Mumukshutvam is the desire to understand, the search for wisdom, to have a deep desire to know, a deep desire to understand what it means to be human, what is human nature, called mumukshutvam. So manushyatvam, being human, mumukshutvam, having an interest in, a desire to understand and to know. And thirdly, he says, Mahapurusha samsrayaha, and a teacher. Mahapurusha samsrayaha, a kind teacher who accepts you as a student. And so he continues, it's a very beautiful poem. It's a very beautiful meter also in which it is composed. Labdva katanchit narajanma durlabham tatrapi pumstvam sruti paradarshanam yastvatma muktau nayateta mudhahi sahyatmaha swam vinihantya sadgrahat. Shankara says, Labdva katanchit narajanma durlabham. We don't know, he says, by some gift of grace, we are human. So in the first verse, he says, these three are gifts of grace. By some gift of grace, we are human beings. Labdva katanchit narajanma, human birth. Durlabham, that which is most difficult, we have been given. We don't know why, but we have received it. Tatra pipumstvam, and we have good minds, defect-free minds, minds endowed with ability to know. Tatra pipumstvam srutipara darshanam, a mind that can learn, a mind that can understand. Srutipara darshanam, can understand the teachings of the Sruti, teachings of the Upanishad. If he says, you have all of this, you've been gifted with all of this, yaswatma muktau nayateta mudhahi, and you don't employ them, you don't use them to know who you are, to know yourself. Sahyatma haswam vinihantya sadgrahat. It is like as though you had chose to destroy yourself. You have chosen a path of self-destruction, a path of great, great loss. So ihached avidita, if you know here, there is great truth. If you don't, then there is great loss. Mahavinashti. And he comes back again. It's so beautiful, you can see what he wants to leave his students with after this opening line, that if you know it, you have found a great truth, great gift, the highest gift that can't be taken away. The time does not erode. If you have not, then there is great loss. And how again he comes back? How do we know? How should it be understood? He told us before, pratibodha viditam matam. In every state of mind, it is present, we should know it. Now see what he says here. How else he should know it? Bhuteshu bhuteshu vichitra dhiraha. How beautifully he puts this now. So I should know it, I should know myself in every state of mind, like the screen on which all of the images constantly move. My attention should be on that ground, the ground of all my thinking. And then he says, but you also have to understand it by understanding that that is also the truth of every being. Bhuteshu, bhuteshu. That's what I started my lecture this morning with. It is not only to see oneself as that and to have reverence and self-respect, strength, but it's also to see this one, this Atma, Brahman, bhuteshu, bhuteshu, vichitra dhira. If I don't make that leap to see myself in all, bhuteshu, bhuteshu, he repeats the word, in every being, in every being. Bhuta is being, bhuteshu, bhuteshu, vichitra dhiraha. Dhira is a wise one. When you're wise, you know that this is present in every being, every being. Bhuteshu, bhuteshu, vichitra dhiraha. Pretyasmad lokar amrita bhavanti. That is the understanding that confers strength and immortality. So it's not a self-centered understanding. Madatma sarva bhutatma. From Guru Stotram that we chant, Madatma sarva bhutatma. Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So who is the teacher that I bow before? Who has helped me to understand Mad Atma, that myself is what? Sarva bhutatma. That myself is the self of all. That is fundamental. Or else, Atma is ego. Atma is egocentric. If it is only myself, I've learned something about my ego, but I have not learned what Atma is. That Atma is Brahman. And this is what he had said in a series of verses before. This verse ends the second section of Kena Upanishad. The third part is really fascinating. The text tells a beautiful story. It's a wonderful story about the main obstacle, at least one of the main obstacles to gaining and assimilating this knowledge, which is arrogance. It's a story about arrogance, about human arrogance that is told in a very beautiful account. An account that recapitulates all that we have studied so far in the text. So when we meet, we will complete. It moves very quick now. We can, I will summarize the story and then I'll suggest how I read it. And of course, you can also think about what this narrative means to you. So when we meet next time, I will narrate this story about arrogance as an obstacle to knowledge, and we can try to unpack its meaning.